Elliot here, ESBR Boxing, joined by my esteemed co-colleague Niall. We're here obviously in reaction, first and foremost in reaction to what's being billed as a shock loss for Joyce against Zhang. Obviously stopped at the end of the fifth round. Took a somewhat of a beating, to be honest with you. Like eyes closed, obviously, blood from the nose, etc., etc. Niall, obviously Joyce has been referred to previously as a man that necessarily couldn't be stopped. There was talk about him having bone density 5 times the size of the average man. But let's just go into it first and foremost. Let me just get your reaction straight away to what we've seen. Was it shock? Is it surprise? Is it where are you sitting? Where are you sitting right now?
Yeah, it's shock. It's definitely shock. As I said to you just there before recording, I underestimated Zhang in a way, but that was more to just due to thinking that Joyce was this unstoppable freak of a fighter. It's I know Zhang had quality in his size and what he done to Hergovic. He probably should have got the decision against Hergovic, but I thought John would start well, like he did, obviously, but I thought Joyce would grow into it and just drown him in the end, to be quite honest, but didn't turn out that way.
No, it's it certainly did. It certainly did not. Obviously, like Zhang's also been. He's also an Olympic medalist as well. Obviously has some boxing ability as we've seen. But equally, I suppose people were looking at it going, the age that he is necessarily, and the people that he'd fought. Obviously, he had the Hergovic victory. I agree with you as well. I think he won that fight. Was somewhat surprised, I suppose. Were you surprised that, given? I mean, look, Joyce has obviously been a slow starter in the past. He's not necessarily the quickest, but tends to grind his opponents down. But were you surprised actually with the ease that Zhang was hitting him? I know he hurt him obviously in the first round. He seemed to hurt him several times as well throughout the fight. Were you surprised at the difference in skill level seemingly today, or would you just think, it was to be expected at some point?
Yeah, I suppose I wasn't so surprised at the fact that how easy he was hitting him. Obviously, Joyce is quite easily hit. I know he can take a shot, but he's always quite easily hit no matter who's against. But what did surprise me was how badly he hurt him early in the second round with the left hand. He hurt him significantly, he buckled back towards the ropes, but I think that was a sign of things to come, and it showed how powerful Zhang really is, as well as being fast. Like for such a big fighter, he's deceptively quick. I think with the left hand and also being an awkward southpaw, it was just as you said, it was so easy. I was shocked at how easy he had it there, especially in the earlier rounds.
No, absolutely, I totally agree. And obviously, if you think, the Joyce was WBO interim champion, was in line for a title shot with Usyk. Obviously, Usyk also a southpaw. Didn't look good from a sort of a sort of orthodox versus southpaw matchup perspective there. But do you think? Let me just ask you. There's talk about potentially, Joyce going straight back into the rematch with Zhang. Some people have said that he possibly shouldn't do that given the damage that he sustained in the fight. But equally, do you think that's the route that Joyce would go down? Is that the route you think he should go down? Or if you were him, would you go a different way?
I think personally, again, I can only see the rematch going one way, and as well when you have such a chin, it would be interesting to see if Joyce's chin holds up now. They say once it cracks, it
Hmm.
can never go back to the way it was before. But I would like to see a rematch. I'd like, preferably for Zhang, I'd like to see him go to maybe a world title fight, but I would be curious to see if Joyce could do anything differently for a rematch the next
Let's
time
talk
it
about
comes
that
up.
actually with like saying with Zhang there. Will you go in? I mean, do you give him say let's say for example that you fought Usyk? Do you give him or even Fury or I mean, even less? We can throw in I suppose Joshua as well and Wilder in those games. How do you think he would fare? Do you think he'd beat? There's a chance he beats any of those guys. Do you think he takes any of those guys the distance? Do you think he's a live opponent against any of those opponents, or do you think that those guys are still a cut above?
I was just thinking about that actually. I think no matter who he was to face, I think he'd just be a horrible night's work for anybody. Being so tall, so heavy, southpaw, and so quick, I think he'd give fighters like that a lot of problems. I think Fury and Usyk, he'd he'd come up short, but that's not anything against him. That's just they're still a club above anyone else for me, and they
No,
beat
no, I agree.
anybody else. But I think outside the champions, I think he'd give them hell, and I think he could beat Joshua, to be honest, and the likes of Dillian White. It'll be interesting to see will Dillian White call
No,
him out.
absolutely. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, will be as vocal as calling out Zhang as he was for Joyce because he was there tonight and he was very vocal about calling out Joyce before the fight started. So will he be as keen to face Zhang now after seeing that? I don't know, but yeah, it's a lot of interesting fights from there.
And what about Joyce? I mean, obviously Joyce, like we said, was I mean, obviously that victory over Parker, he was almost on like he's ascending in this way, and people were talking about him. Would his bone density essentially withstand Wilder? Would he be able to grind down Usyk? Would he be a tough night for Fury, etc.? Do you think this fight tonight takes all that kind of hype away from him, or do you think essentially if he comes back and wins a rematch, if he wins it well, we can sort of continue the sort of Joe Joyce versus the champions conversation, or do you think that's kind of him out of that conversation for the foreseeable future?
I think, to be honest, I think he would have to come back and win a rematch quite comfortably. You know, I was thinking while I was watching that fight when he got hurt badly, I was thinking even if he was to go on to win this now, it's been proven that he can be hurt. Like there was the questions there of whether he could take a Wilder right hand or there was that mystique there about the chin, but he has proved now even that he can be hurt, but it would be a big statement now for him to come back and beat John quite comfortably.
And then obviously with the I was going back to John with the fights that he's had, obviously like you say the questionable loss to Hergovic, this loss to Joyce. Obviously, I mean he's been talking as if there's not a rematch of going straight into a title fight. Do you? I mean, obviously, we'd like to see that. I think that's a fight that's a we'd love to see him in fights. I mean, him versus AJ, for example, in China, be a massive fight, massive event. Do you think that's realistic though, or do you think, given the sort of given the attributes he has, the power he clearly has, the size that he has, whether anyone will necessarily take that chance, or do you think he'll essentially be kind of cast aside as a kind of who needs him fighter over the next sort of year?
Yeah, I think that is the danger that he could be seen as very high risk, low reward type of fighter. You know, as you say, so tall, so powerful, southpaw, so heavy. If it, out, the fact that he doesn't have a belt is going to really hinder chances of anyone wanting to go near him, to be honest. Especially now that the belts are being, it's so hard now to get a shot at a title. You know, people aren't going to use someone like Zhang as a kind of interim fight. Yeah, to
No, I
be
totally agree, and I think but we're obviously in shock here. We saw what happened with with Daniel Dubois when he fought obviously Joyce and the eye injury, and he's obviously managed to rebuild himself. We're potentially sitting here saying that Joe Joyce, we don't necessarily know, I suppose, the severity of that injury yet. Obviously, it will come out, I suppose, in the coming days. He'll obviously have to do the same. I'll ask you, I suppose, that given these guys, what, 37, 39, U6, 35, 36, Fury still relatively younger, I suppose, in that list, so it's like 34, 35, Joshua 33, I think, at the moment. Do you see Joyce or Zhang becoming a world champion in their careers, or do you think with age not necessarily being on their side, it might be a bridge too far for both men?
that's the thing. The time frame for both of them is quite small now. You know, it's cut and fine. So realistically, I would have liked. Well, I'd expected Joe to get the win, but I'd like to see now Jean get a crack at a world title before that window closes, which it will close quite soon. You know, he's pushing 40, so and he's proven now the quality that he has. So I'd love to see him get a shot at a world title to see
Oh,
does
I'd
he
love to
really.
see it. I'd love to see it as well. And I'm just going to say, if it doesn't happen, they go back into the Joyce rematch. One of the questions I'm going to ask you here, just to kind of finish, is obviously we've seen it. We've seen it kind of fresh. What's happened today? We're still reacting to it. But what advice or what sort of stylistic changes would you suggest for Joe Joyce? I mean, obviously Frampton's come on that today. I've seen comments from him essentially saying that Joyce showed quite a lot of an amateur approach. Really, there was quite a lot of novice kind of work in what he was doing. How essentially, if you're Joe Joyce's trainers, how do you advise him essentially to overcome the problem with Zhang if there was to be a rematch?
Um, I suppose I might give a bit of a sitting on the fence answer here, but it's quite hard for somebody like Joyce to change his style or to make wholesale changes to his style with both being 37, but he relies so much. What you see is what you get with Joyce. It's come forward, brute power, relying on the chin. So I don't know. that's truthfully the truthful answer is I don't know what sort of stylistic changes you can make against someone as awkward and big and powerful as Zhang, but whether there was something going on before the fight that might have hindered him, I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me to see him win a rematch. But in terms of stylistic changes, I don't think there's much you can do, especially at this stage of his career, to be honest.
I have to say, no, I totally agree with you. I think it's almost like when you think of Joyce, you think in some ways of Homer Simpson when he used to go in there and just get punched and then eventually grind out the opponent and then push him over. And I feel like if that resistance does start to wilter against the guys, well, obviously Zhang's a heavy hitter, but then if you throw him in with like AJ, we've seen Fury with the power that he's obviously had to stop, Wilder, White, and all those guys as well. So it doesn't look good essentially at this stage. But we reserve judgment. We'll say hopefully there'll be a rematch. Hopefully Joyce can either revenge or repeat, as it were. Hopefully it doesn't tie up Zhang for too long either. Hopefully one of these guys obviously gets a shot, whether it's a mandatory shot at Usyk or not. We wait and see. But Niall, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for joining me. As
Thank
again,
you.
we're reacting to the news that Joyce has been stopped. There's the fifth round on doctor stepping in, obviously, and saying the eye injury is too great to continue. We'll see what happens in the coming days. But yeah, Niall, thank you very much for your time. And thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
guys, for watching.